Significance of the halving is it's kind of like if Warren Buffett said, I'm going to buy $9 billion of Bitcoin every year for the next 4 years, starting on April 20th. That's what the halving is. It's a natural demand for $35 million worth of Bitcoin a day, every day for the next 4 years. Or you could say, Bitcoin is a market where there's $18 billion of supply available, and there's a demand that's more than that, but in a couple of days, there won't be 18 billion in supply, there'll be 9 billion in supply.
Yeah.
So if I told you I was going to cut the production of oil in half in 2 weeks, you would think the price would go up.
Yes.
And so that's the significance of the halving. There's not going to be any more than the 450 Bitcoin available from natural sellers. The natural buyers are people that want to store their life savings. They want a store of value, and they're wanting to save their capital. And when they buy, they'll buy and hold it for a decade. Maybe they'll hold it forever, but they'll hold it for a long, long time. And a lot of them are coming into the market because of the approval of these spot ETFs right now.
Yeah.
So they're the buyers. The miners are the sellers. The demand is going to increase. The supply is going to decrease. The price will have to adjust to find marginal sellers that want to sell at a higher price.
MicroStrategy founder and Bitcoin maximalist Michael Saylor predicts that the recent halving event is sure to drive Bitcoin's price to levels higher than we've ever seen. In his recent interview, Saylor asserts that Bitcoin is the future, and the demand for it will only get higher as time goes on. The more investors spend ample time studying this new asset class, the more they will see its true value and will want to allocate to it for financial security. Saylor believes that even Warren Buffett, a well-known financial figure who is anti-Bitcoin, would soon come to realize Bitcoin's tremendous power as a digital asset if he were to spend just enough time in studying it. Now let's view some clips of Michael Saylor as he shares his latest Bitcoin outlook and predictions.
How many times have you eaten junk this week? You're just wasting your money. Stop. You don't have time. Don't miss out this 2025 bull run. Educate yourself first ahead of the crowd. Skip your next junk meal and instead invest in your education. We have created the ultimate step-by-step crypto cheat guide that will guide you this bull run. Unlock the secrets of crypto and make smarter investments today. Now by clicking on the link below to get your exclusive copy just under $10.
I actually think that if Warren Buffett had 100 hours to consider Bitcoin, and if he wasn't in his 90s, if he was in his 60s, he probably would spend the time to learn it, and he'd be a big Bitcoin believer. Because Warren Buffett is an adherent of the buy and hold strategy, the HODL. He's probably the most famous hodler of his generation. He bought Coca-Cola and he still owns the stock. He would buy companies and hold them for 30 years. He said he's very famous for this phrase, if I wouldn't hold it for 10 years, you shouldn't hold it for 10 minutes. And that's the Bitcoin idea too. Buy something you're going to hold for 10 years. I think that people that get asked about Bitcoin but have only spent an hour studying it or a few minutes, they just misunderstand it. And because they misunderstand it, they're goaded to criticize it or dismiss it out of hand just because they misunderstand it. Most people that are skeptics or cynics, they think it's a currency that's going to replace the dollar and replace the banking system or replace, governments. And on that basis, or they think or they confuse it with crypto tokens that are securities. And they either think it's a scam or they think it's a threat to the dollar. If you study it deeper, you realize it's property. And once you think of it as it's a digital building or it's digital property, I'm buying it instead of buying an apartment to rent out as retirement income, or I'm buying it instead of buying a building, or I'm buying it instead of buying an acre of land because I want to store my savings for 30 years. When you think of it like that, it becomes non-controversial. And I think if somebody said to Warren Buffett, I'm thinking about buying, a Bitcoin instead of buying an apartment to rent out.
So
what do you think? I think he would have a different reaction.
Yeah.
I've never met any critic that spent 100 hours studying Bitcoin. I don't think there is anybody in the world that spent 100 hours studying Bitcoin that's critical of it. Bitcoin is the strongest store of value in the 21st century. And when I look at strength, I consider the half-life of the money. And what I mean is half-life is, I mean, how long will your economic energy or your capital last? And if you take money, $1 million, and you buy pesos with it, and they're running a 40% inflation rate, the half-life of the money is 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
You'll lose half of the money in 18 months and then the next half of the money in 3 years. And so you'll be down to, 12% of your money in 4.5 years. The half-life of money of your economic energy in the dollar is about 10 years, because there's about a 7% monetary expansion rate. If you had the $1 million, it would be worth $500,000 in 10 years. If you actually look at Miami Beach real estate, an acre of land in Miami Beach was worth $10,000 in 1930. It's worth $10 million today. That means that it's 1,000 times as expensive. If you do the math quickly, that means that the monetary inflation rate is 7.5%. And that means the half-life of your capital in the US dollar for the last 100 years is 10 years. Every 10 years you get cut in half. Doesn't sound that bad, but over 100 years, that means your 0.1% of your money is left. So dollar is isn't really a good store of value. What about gold? Gold's half-life is 30 years. Every 30 years, you double the gold supply under the best case. What about property? Well, then it's a function of, can you pay the tax? If you can buy land and you can afford the tax, actually, it'll keep going up, in value. It'll track that money supply. The value of Bitcoin is Bitcoin is the same thing as beachfront property in South Beach. It's like there's only 96 blocks. No government can make more than that amount of beachfront. And that's why it goes up by a factor of 1,000. If the government could make more of it, if you could manufacture more, if a robot could make more, if an AI could make more, the price would plummet over 100 years. That's why it's cheap to buy boxed cereal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very expensive to eat fish that's caught on a line by an individual or a hunter. It's things that require a lot of labor are expensive. So Bitcoin, you could think of it as a city in cyberspace, 256 blocks across, 256 blocks long, 256 blocks high. There'll never be more than 21 million. 276 blocks is the right number. The cube root of 21 million is about 276. So if you imagine a city in cyberspace, 276 blocks on a cube, that is the immutable supply of that asset. And that's all there's ever going to be for 1,000 years, maybe for 10,000 years. Yeah. And so one day, all 8 billion people in the world want to live there. Maybe they don't live there physically, but they live there with their money, with their capital. And it's kind of like, if you could buy 3 acres of land in Palm Beach 100 years ago, and you could afford to keep it for 100 years, it'd be worth $300 million right now. But if you live in Nigeria, you can't buy the land, and you probably can't pay the tax. The advantage of Bitcoin is it's in cyberspace, so you don't have that same kind of property tax, and anybody anywhere in the world can buy it. And so it offers that immutable, immortal, scarce, desirable property for everybody in the world, and they can access it with nothing more than a mobile phone.
Meanwhile, MicroStrategy, the top corporate holder of Bitcoin, reported a net loss of $53.1 million in Q1 2024. Despite this, the company continued to accumulate Bitcoin in April, adding 122 Bitcoin to its holdings. The net loss was mainly due to a $191.6 million digital asset impairment loss, with revenue also declining by 5.5% compared to Q1 2023. Notably, MicroStrategy has yet to adopt the new digital asset fair value accounting standard, which would reflect the significant increase in Bitcoin's market value during the quarter. While the firm's carrying value of Bitcoin stands at over $5 billion, it would be $15.2 billion under the fair value approach. The company just raised $1.5 billion from 2 convertible note debt offerings in Q1, marking its 14th consecutive quarter of adding to its Bitcoin balance sheet. Now, let's return to Michael Saylor's discussion.
Is don't invest your money, invest your time. Spend 100 hours. Everybody in the world works 100 hours every 2 or 3 weeks, their entire life to make money. If you're going to work 40,000 hours in the course of your life to make money, you might as well work 100 hours to keep it. Once you start to study it, you'll realize that it's backed by 15 gigawatts of electricity. That's 15 nuclear reactors. That's a lot of electricity. That's all the electricity that runs the U.S. Navy. Imagine all the power in the U.S. Navy. And then you'll see it's backed by 600 exahash. That's all the computer power that Amazon, Microsoft, and Google can muster. Maybe you don't know how many data centers Microsoft or Google or Apple have, but you know that they're very valuable companies. And if I show you a network which is more powerful than them, you would think, okay, that's very tangible. You start to study all the companies that have backed it, Block and Fidelity and Coinbase and MicroStrategy and BlackRock, And once you start to see all of these organizations that are supporting it, you realize that there's a network of hundreds of millions of people, thousands of corporations, gigawatts of electricity, tens of billions of dollars of computing data centers, and hundreds of billions of dollars have been invested in this network. And everybody has one thing in common. They believe in the idea of digital money and digital capital. The world's got $900 trillion of capital, of wealth in it. And most of that wealth, it's stored there for when you need it in the future. So if I give you a lot of money, you've got to decide to invest it in the stock market, in the real estate market, or buy debt, or put it in a bank. They all have risk. Bitcoin represents a bank in cyberspace run by incorruptible software. It's for people that don't want to be their own hedge fund. Why should you have to gamble on a stock to not lose your money? Why should you have to trust a bank? Maybe you trust your bank, but what about the bank in Lebanon that stole everybody's money and froze it and then devalued it? What bank are you supposed to trust in a war zone? What bank do you trust when the currency's collapsing, right? So the world needs a bank it can trust. It needs a property that is beyond the reach of a government, a corporation, an individual. Bitcoin represents that bank in cyberspace that offers property rights to 8 billion people. You don't know it yet, but then again, you use an iPhone. Why does it work? Where does the music come from? Where do the videos on YouTube come from? Right? The world is going through a digital transformation. What I'm saying is this is the digital transformation of money, of capital, of property. Right? If you want to give music to 1 billion people, you need digital music. If you want to give wealth to 1 billion people, you need digital capital. You're not going to give money and property rights. You're not going to give economic security to everybody on earth without the digital form of capital. If you're an individual investor or you're a family, Bitcoin makes a good treasury asset. You can build a family on it. If you want to store assets for 100 years so your great-grandchildren are able to live well on what you've earned in your life, then Bitcoin is, I think, my best idea for that. I think Bitcoin can be used to back a company. You can use it to back a bank. You can use it to back a family. If you have a charity or a religion or any nonprofit organization, you need an endowment. The real issue is, what are you going to invest? Do you want a big endowment or a small one? You want a big one. Do you want your endowment to go up 30% a year or 20% a year, or do you want it to go up 2% a year? You want it to go up 30% a year. So Bitcoin represents an endowment to my corporation.
What do you think it would take for traditional investors like Buffett to fully embrace Bitcoin? And do you think MicroStrategy's long-term investment in Bitcoin will pay off? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel to see more similar content from us. Click the notification bell to stay updated and never miss any of our videos about the latest crypto news. Thank you so much for watching until the end. We hope to see you in our next video. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, Check out these two awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.